Hello, welcome to Rob, Ryan, Red, the Wrexham podcast brought to you in association with Red 10 People Development. Well, it was billed as the Battle of North versus South. In the end, it was capital punishment for Phil Parkinson's side. Outclassed by Cardiff City, exiting the League Cup, no quarter-final tie. We'll have to do with the FA Cup instead. On today's podcast, we will look back at the Cardiff defeat and, of course, look ahead to our mouth-watering clash with Coventry this weekend. All that and more on today's show.
Rob, Ryan, Red.
Well, Nath took the defeat so badly that he's gone off to Scotland. He's absconded for being a Wrexham fan. So, Andrew Pollard, you're back on the podcast. I'd say it's nice to have you here, but the elephant in the room, we have jumped straight on this call today, by the way, listeners. We have not spoken about the match one bit. We've not said a word to each other. Andrew, how bad was that?
What match? I don't remember any match. I've got no recollection of a match. There definitely wasn't much of a match on the pitch. Yeah, it was a grim one. It wasn't. It was frustrating. It was. Yeah, we look clueless at times, which is a phrase I don't like to throw around too often with Phil Parkinson. But I mean, you can criticize Parky while also appreciating what he's done for the club as well. I mean, it's one thing if you're going in, and I've seen some people who, Parky's out of his depth, Parky out, all that stuff. That's way over the top. But criticism is fair at times like that. It was just, we look like it's kind of all the football cliches coming out. We look like strangers out there. It was like we were trying to play for the first half as if Kiefer Moore was up front. And for all the willing and running Sam Smith does, he is not the stature of Kiefer Moore, but we were still just trying. And we could not get the job done. And I mean, fair play to Cardiff. Absolutely. They bossed that game. That we had a spell of maybe 15 minutes in the second half where we looked lively. But other than that, it could have been 3-4, who knows, 5-1. It was a rough day at the office.
Again, yeah, you make a good point there that we need to caveat this. We are so privileged now that bad days for Wrexham is when you don't reach the quarterfinal of a major cup competition. And we have been such victims of our own success that we have gone from being these plucky underdogs to the team you expect to win in a game against Cardiff City. We're in the Championship. You've got to look at that. And all our argument is caveated with that. We are very fortunate, very lucky. But like you said, Angie, it's just so disappointing, isn't it? Because we've waited, 2 decades to play Cardiff. 7 years ago, they were in the Premier League. We were in the National League. We've talked the talk. We wanted to put a show on. I know this also isn't maybe our concern so much, but it's on terrestrial TV in the UK. It's free to air. There'll be so many people watching that who are aware of the Wrexham story. They've seen this rise. They've maybe not watched us play a match. There'll be rival fans saying, hey, let's have a look at Wrexham, see how they do in the Championship this season. And they will have seen one of the worst performances we've produced under Phil Parkinson. And that is what's so disappointing, isn't it? That in the context of just that game, it was just not a display of what we could do, not an advert for all the good work we've done over the 4 years.
No, I'd agree 1,000% with that. It was, if that's the first time you've tuned in to watch a Wrexham game thinking, what's all this hype about? You would just be thinking, what is that about? That is horrendous how they got this far. Obviously, we've got this far because of, a lot of money, but hard graft, very smart, sensible purchases. Obviously, the old dickhead rule, as Parky always calls it, and Phil Parkinson has done a phenomenal job. But if you're basing it solely on last night, I mean, we look like a National League team, and we look like a poor National League team last night. Just nobody. I say nobody turned up. I thought Max did okay. I thought Dobble did okay in spells, a few sloppy moments, and there were bits and bobs, obviously, when we made the changes at half time. I thought Matty James, again, for maybe 15, 20 minutes, added a lot, just having like a base of that midfield, and Kiefer is Kiefer. But when you look at the players out there who've come into this game, who this is a real chance for them to stamp themselves, maybe in contention for Coventry, but just to kind of remind Parky, like, this is what I can do. Not many of those players did it. I mean, Ollie Rathbone, I felt so sorry for him. Just being thrown into that when he's he's been on the bench, I think once. Was it the Stoke game he was on the bench? Not had any minutes of first team football this season. And then you start him in a game like that, a massive game against Cardiff, a Cardiff team who are flying at the top of League One. And Ollie wasn't up to the races, and that is not his fault. But it's just that was a story across the board. There were so many people not up to the races. I mean, Conor Coady is an obvious person to single out, I think, without, again, trying to dig anybody out particularly. I will get off the fence. But I think with Conor, you expect him to be beaten for pace at times. And there are certain times, I mean, we saw it against QPR. There's certain times where there are balls behind which you are not going to get just because somebody's quicker than you. It's human physics. But it's one thing when you're getting bullied by opposition players, and that's part of your game, is how you read the game, where you're sensible enough and smart enough to know where it's going and to position yourself there and to use your physicality. I mean, a former Premier League player, an England international, for him to be getting bullied, which he was for most of that game, it's just, that stood out as well. And I mean, poor Thomason playing left centre-back, just first half, he all over the show, couldn't put a pass together. Second half, I thought he was a lot better. But for him, I feel bad because he's coming off a really strong performance against Middlesbrough and just a really strong few performances when he's played. So just so many disappointments across the board. And you think as well for those players, the ones involved, if they, I mean, some of them will play against Coventry, but you think, what does that sort of result do for their morale, their confidence going into a game against a Coventry team who are absolutely flying on the Frank Lampard?
Yeah, you mentioned there that prior to the game, I was saying, I've been banging the drum for weeks, and I'd love to see Ryan Hardie on the pitch. And then we see him on the pitch, and his confidence is bereft. And it already just feels like, when is he going to get his next chance now? Because you just can't afford to give him too many opportunities when he's missing the chances he is. Conor Coady, you said as well. And again, the issue of Conor Coady is he arrived on, let's face it, massive wages for this level, a huge pedigree, talk the talk very eloquently on all the podcasts and stuff. And you can't make a case for him to be starting games right now. And that's what's so disappointing, I think. What I want to ask you, though, is when you look back on that, do you think, because obviously I was so flat and deflated after that game, the most flat I felt since the Grimsby playoff, which, is years ago, and we're so lucky that it feels so long since we've had sort of these flat performances under Parky. But this one felt really just like a huge missed opportunity. Do you think that was a case of the players not being up for it, a lack of fight, or perhaps that we did underestimate League One opposition? Because we've spoken ourselves about how big the gulf is between League One and the Championship, and maybe we thought, well, we'll be fine even if they're doing well. But if you actually look at it, there's probably, 8 or 9 league places between the two clubs, and maybe we took that for granted when we actually played them.
Yeah, no, I think that is part of it. I think it's not a case of we're not showing them enough respect, but the fact that Parky's played that rotated team and such a rotated team. Yes, I know we have an eye on Friday against Coventry, and I know there were some fans who were saying play the strong team last night as we're recording this against Cardiff, and then play the weaker team against Coventry because there's no way we're going to get anything out of that. I do think we can get something out of Coventry. I'm still, it's the hope that kills you. But yeah, last night it was, I don't know if it's fair to say the players weren't up for it, but something was not right. Again, I go back to, they felt like strangers on the pitch. And yes, there's been a lot of new signings over the summer, but with the end of October now, and a lot of those players that are out there have played together numerous times. So that shouldn't really be a thing. But just going into it, the build between before the game, the hype around it, the all Welsh thing, the fact that there's a place in the quarterfinals. I believe there was maybe a kerfuffle or two in town beforehand to add to some of the spice. But even to throw a little cheap plug in there for the My Square, we had Gary Bennett as our guest speaker, who obviously talked a lot about his goals, but against Cardiff, winning the Welsh Cup back in 1995, where Benno scored 2, and that was a massive thing at the time. And so you walking into the racecourse to Kairas, and you're on this right, this is it, this is massive, this feels huge all of a sudden. And then that first half is just, it took all the air out of it. And it is, I don't want to say the players haven't got the fight, but Cardiff wanted it more. It comes down to, I thought. Cardiff wanted it more. The manager was animated, should we say, but they played good football. And there was Kellyman, Amari Kellyman, their number 8, I think, or 10, I can't remember, but he's playing on the right side first half. And he had us on toast. And it was as if nobody on our team or nobody on the side of the pitch kind of went like, oh, there's that player there who keeps beating us and creating chances and having shots. It was just, we just kind of ignored him and let him do what he wanted to do on corners. He was always spare there. And Ruben Colwell, man of the match, easily, just absolutely bullied our midfield, our defence, everything. And just, yeah, Cardiff wanted it more. And when that is a case, that's the basics of football, is no matter how good you are, you've got to want it. And if it's one thing, if we came off that pitch and thought our players have all put in a massive shift there, just Cardiff happened to be better on the day. It wasn't that. Cardiff put in a better shift. We were nowhere near it. And we dare I say, we were lucky to only have a 2-1 defeat.
You mentioned a good point there as well, that I know hindsight's useful, because if Wrexham had played their reserves, albeit against Cardiff, and won, we'd be on such a high right now. We really would have been able to mock them, and say, look, our second string have beaten you. In the end, that's not happened. And Parky has to take those risks as the manager. Fair enough, sometimes selections aren't right. The amount of times we've thought a selection is wrong and it's been justified, you can't just say Parky's always wrong. You wouldn't be in this position without that. But what I did want to ask you, and I don't think this is hindsight or me throwing my toys out the pram, but do you not, from your point of view, would you rather have us won Tuesday or Friday? Because for me, our season would be so much more memorable with a Carabao Cup quarter-final than it would be with whatever happens against Coventry. Even if we were to, beat Coventry 2 or 3-0, I would actually rather have beaten Cardiff just for what it meant and the fact we would have got to a cup quarter-final. I don't think our season would be defined by Friday night, but it could have been defined by Tuesday night, oddly. But I don't know, do you agree with that, or do you think that, look, if we beat Coventry on Friday, all's forgiven and we're out of the woods? Or
I mean, if you ask me, say at 10:30 on Friday night, and we've won 2-0 against Coventry, and I'm in the pub very happy, then maybe. But no, in all seriousness, I think that even if that happened, then I think you look back on this game, because, like you said, that Coventry isn't going to define our season, but get into a quarter-final, then that just opens everything up. Then who knows? Maybe there's a semi-final, but also just the fact that it was Cardiff as well, that would make it even more special. This team that a rival that we've not played for 21 years, I believe it is. It was there for the taking, all the hype behind it. They were, in theory, I guess, the underdogs, which is a role that we've played in cup games in the last couple of, cup games for years. But, when we went to Coventry, or even when we played Sheffield United, and we were like I want to say plucky engine that could, but we had a lot of money behind us, so it's a bit different. But yeah, Cardiff came into this as the roaring underdogs. And just to go back to something you said before, so a mate of mine who's a Liverpool fan who watched the game last night, not knowing anything really about, he keeps a rough eye on Wrexham, but that's it. And he texted me this morning about it, saying like, "Oh, sorry about that. That was really bad." Blah 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 blah. I'm talking about Conor Coady, and I was like, "Oh yeah, he's probably 5th or 6th choice realistic, probably 5th choice if everybody's fit." And he's like, "Really? But I thought you brought him in on this big money in the summer, and it was a big signing." And it was, but after 2, 3, maybe 4 games of the season, it became apparent that. Obviously the business that we did the final day of the transfer window, or final few days, kind of was indicative of maybe he's not quite up to that. But yeah, it's just I would have much rather, to go back to your question that I've totally glossed over, I'd have much rather won against Cardiff than against Coventry.
Yeah, it's interesting to know what people think as well. Let us know, robbrownred@gmail.com. Let us know, I'm sure, in the YouTube comments as well below. And I don't know, it's difficult, isn't it? Because like you said, it just feels like such a missed opportunity, I suppose. And you can still maybe count on one hand these deflating defeats under Parky. I put it up there with sort of Bromley Trophy final, Salford away, Stockport away was abysmal. But that's our. Would you say that was our worst home performance under Parky? Or maybe in the National League we had some dire ones, but got away with it because we were winning. I'm just trying to gauge here how fair a reaction do you think we can have to that sort of game? Because I was being a little moody brat, and I felt so low on Tuesday night, but I do feel it was justified.
It is. There's a fine line between, you don't want to have that entitlement of like, we should be going into this and smashing Cardiff. We haven't. So like you said, I'm going to throw my toys at the pram. But the cold hard facts are that it might be recency bias, but that feels like the worst we played under Parky, just because of how, especially that first half, there was just, we offered nothing. They had us on strings. They were doing whatever they wanted to us, and we were just letting them. So I think it could be the worst in the Parky. If not, it is right up there. And it's just it's kind of some issues that we've had, I think, even going back to recruitment. I'm not the recruitment as such, I guess, because injuries have come into it, but just I get really worried by our wing backs. Because yes, Kakache's great when he seems to be fit, which you never know from a game to a game at the moment. Kabore obviously was rested. When he came on, he showed. It was a bit erratic, but he showed at least a willingness, and he was trying to get forward, and he's got that pace. But when you take that away, there's so many of our wing backs that I think we kind of forgot because of the quality, technical ability of the players, and playing in the League One and League Two, and some in the National League, where you forget that a lot of our wing backs are wingers outright. James McLean, for example, has spent a whole career being a winger, comes to us as a wing back, and yes, he can get away with that in League Two and League One. Championship defensively just not aware enough. And the same with Barney, the same with Ryan Longman. I mean, Ryan Longman, I was talking to a mate of mine last night where he came in as traditionally he's a right winger, and we're playing him as a left wing back and expecting him to defend. And it just, we feel very depleted there. And then when you look at the left side of centre back situation as well now, I mean, obviously Callum Doyle suspended, and then Lewis Brunt out for seemingly 12 weeks I saw. And you do start to think like, oh God, we need something to turn around. And maybe that is Coventry on Friday night. Who knows?
Yeah, again, for me, the last bit on the Cardiff game, what worries me is that we know we're very over-reliant on Kiefer Moore, but once again, it sort of amplified that, and that's what scares me going forward with these 2 games a week. I know we've got another international break coming up. He'll be involved in that as well. It's just a lot for him to have on his shoulders, and he does deliver more often than not, but we've already seen that sort of burnout from Kiefer just maybe after the October international break, go headed into it in the first couple of games back.
Yeah.
And again, you just worry because he's going to be playing Friday, then Wednesday at Portsmouth. He'll be involved as well with the Charlton game. Then he'll be with Wales into the international break, and they'll be involved with us all the way through to those March internationals again, you hope. So that's what does concern me. And again, I think to go full circle and answer that, we're not for a second saying Parky out. But again, even if you were going to say change tactics or change manager or change this and that, you've still only got one proper sort of centre forward, whoever that is. And
that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, it's one thing to have Kiefer Moore as such a pivotal part of the team, but it's also that he's such a unique player to what we've got. There's nobody else that can do that job the way we use him anyway. And you could even argue when you look across the division, there's nobody as good in that role. And when you're so reliant on somebody who's so unique to the rest of your squad, if anything happens to that player, you're kind of knackered. and it is, like I said, I felt it wasn't so much, now I'm reflecting on it a day later, I think some of it last night with some of the players is not even so much frustration, but more, I kind of feel sorry for what they were asked to do. Like I said, Sam Smith and I like Sam Smith a lot. And I think he's busted his backside this season when he's got opportunities, and he's always willing and he's always running. But if you're pinging your balls up to him like you're 6'5" Kiefer Moore against big bruising centre halves, he's facing a losing battle, the poor fella. But yeah, we refresh, we go again. Coventry Friday, nice 2-0 win at the racecourse, in the bag.
Ryan Red.
I say that with a straight face.
Well, Andrew's teed it up so nicely. Wrexham versus Coventry on Friday night. Coventry unbeaten in the league, won 6 league matches in a row for the first time in their history. Ahead of the game, we've caught up with a podcast from Sky Blues TV. But first, Coventry journalist Andy Turner, and he has given us the lowdown on everything about Frank Lampard's side ahead of Friday night. So, Andy, Wrexham versus Coventry. We met you in the FA Cup not so long ago. The times have turned now, though. Wrexham in the Championship, playing Coventry on merit. But saying that, Coventry seem to be a league apart from everyone else this season. 6 league wins in a row for the first time in the club's history in any division. Unbeaten still in the division over 12 matches. What has been the sort of secret behind Cov's success this season, would you say?
I think Frank Lampard's he inherited a really good squad, but what he and his coaches have done is just been incredible, because they didn't go out and spend big in the summer. They brought 3 or 4 players in, which wasn't a great deal, and we were expecting a few more. But what he did do was crucially keep hold of star players, not least Jack Redoney, who, interestingly, has been out injured. So they've gone on this incredible run, largely without Jack Redoney. They're arguably their best player, and he's still not fit. But what Frank Lampard did very quickly when he came in last November is he instilled incredible confidence in each and every one of the players. I mean, there are stories all over the pitch where you see players have just gone up a level. I'll give you 2 or 3 examples. Brandon Thomas Asante is one. He's the standout one at the moment. He joined the club from West Brom summer before last, and he had a really, really indifferent first season, and he was in and out the side, never really held down a starting position, and fans, basically the jury was out on him, and fans didn't really take to him immediately, and everybody was sort of thinking, well, he nearly went to Blackburn in the January transfer window last year. And it was really one of those where, you thought, well, he doesn't look a great signing. He's not made that impact. This season, different completely. He's gone to another level. And he is actually playing out of position. He's been filling in, and he's shown his versatility because he's been filling in for injured players on the left flank, on the right flank, in the number 10 role, filling in for Jack Redoney. And he's got, he's leading scorer in the Championship, which is just bonkers, to think that from where he came from last season. And he's just in this sort of real rich vein of form. There are other players like Jay De Silva. His first 18 months at Coventry City, again, you thought, why have they signed this guy? He just didn't excite. He didn't sort of, fans were sort of thinking, crikey, and in actual fact, he lost his place to the guy that he came in to replace. Jake Bidwell came back into the side. But under Lampard, it's almost like he's just sort of injected this sort of new lease of life into him. And he's undroppable at the minute. He's sort of, he's first choice left back if they play in a 4, or wing back if they play in a 3 at the back with wing backs. And he's just another one who's taken his game to another level. Hagi Wright's another one. Accusations last season of perhaps being a little bit lazy, not sort of working hard enough off the ball. This season, he started the season sort of, in really, really good form, and was leading scorer until overtaken by Brandon. Ellis Sims is another one, a frustrating player. He's got all the raw attributes, a big, physical, strong lad, can score goals and bully defenders. And this season, although he's had to sort of work from the bench and sort of earn his stripes, if you like, and his game time, he's looked a different player again, and he started against Portsmouth last week ahead of Hagi Wright, because Hagi had come back from international duty and looked a bit tired. And he was outstanding. He didn't get a goal, but he was outstanding. And he's really sort of pushing for a start again. And he might be one of those players that Friday night's game might suit him because of the physicality of the game, because you mentioned Kiefer Moore before we came on air about his presence in both boxes. Well, Ellis Sims does exactly the same. He's a defensive help as well as an attacking threat in the opposition box as well. But there are stories all over the pitch, and that's down to Frank Lampard. Whether it's because it's Frank Lampard, the legend that is Frank Lampard, coming in, and everybody's sort of looking up to him and thinking, wow, it's Frank Lampard. He's just a really, really good people person. His man management is second to none. He's got great coaches with him, and there's this real tight-knit unit, a really strong dressing room. And it's just really clicking at the minute. It's just really working.
We've got to ask you on Frank there, but he's got, I don't know, I think externally he's got an odd reputation in football. He did such a good job at Derby, but at Everton and, particularly second spell at Chelsea as interim, he almost became this sort of, he was mocked quite a bit, and people saying that, he had this sort of reputation, I think, with his sort of media dealings, that he was really matey, and then maybe he lacked that sort of cutthroat authority you need to be a top manager. What was the sort of Coventry perspective when he was appointed initially? Were fans happy to have him, or because a legend of the football game as a player doesn't always transpire to be a good manager? And what was the reputation like when he first arrived?
Well, I think it was mixed, really, I guess. I guess there was an element of excitement because of who he is and what he'd achieved, particularly at Derby. And I think, I think a lot of fans sort of separated the Premier League experiences with the Derby experience. What we were interested in was what could he do in the Championship, and he'd already got a track record of getting Derby to the playoff finals in his first season in management. So that was sort of a big tick in the box. But obviously he was coming in, and there were big shoes to fill. taking over from Mark Robins, whose sacking was hugely unpopular at the time. And there was big kickback against the owner, Doug King, at the time, because everybody felt that, that having had this wonderful 7-year experience rise up the leagues, not dissimilar to the feeling that Wrexham have had in the last 4 years, where everything has just been, having had years in the doldrums, years of just treading water in the Championship and then treading water in League One and struggling to put out a decent side. All of a sudden, it's just been this upward curve, and it's carried on going. And I guess the jury was out. As people were a little bit sceptical, thought it might have been like a bit of a trophy appointment, big name, England legend, Chelsea legend, all the rest of it, high profile. But to be fair to Frank, he stamped his mark very, very quickly, and and as just they were 17th in the league when he took over, and they got to the playoffs. It was just an incredible ride that first season, last season, and he's just taking it to another level this season, and the fans absolutely love him. And he's so invested in Coventry City as a football club, so invested in the fans, in the players. And, he's just passing through. It's just how long he stays at Coventry. But interestingly, he was linked quite heavily with the Rangers job in the last month or so, last couple of months. And he came out publicly because we asked him about it. And he said, look, I love it at Coventry. I've got work to do here. It's something that I'm really invested in. And, I'm not looking to leave anytime soon. Now, whether that means, you get to next summer and, if he gets them promoted, whatever, obviously he's going to be a wanted man, isn't he? He's going to be a wanted manager. So we don't know how far that's going to last. But for the time being, at least, he's doing a fantastic job and the fans love him. And you can see that in his celebrations after the games. After they win, goes to the fans, it's fist pumps and into the crowd, all this sort of stuff. And it's really good at the minute.
Yeah, we might see more of those on Friday night, I'm fearing. I've got to ask you as well, Andy, about Coventry the last couple of years. I know it was under Robins, but there was playoff heartbreak in the final. There was an FA Cup semi-final, heroic heartbreak that day. There's been times where you missed out on the playoffs when it seemed inevitable you'd get them. And then there's been such last season where there was a surge up to get to the playoffs again. These past experiences, do you think Coventry are better because they've had that sort of together as a group? So many of those players have been there and they've felt how agonising close they've been in the past. Do you think Coventry are now showing signs and almost reaping the rewards of that turbulence and that heartbreak in recent years?
Yeah, I think so. Also, I think it's the playoffs are such a lottery, aren't they? The Luton one, going out on a penalty shootout, and in sudden death, it's just, it's just on a knife edge, isn't it? It could go either way. But yeah, I think they are better for those experiences. And I think what the fans realise is, and Mark Robins talked about this a lot, it's always been sort of like it's incremental growth, and you feel that season on season that they keep improving in certain areas, whether it's as a wider squad as a whole, more strength in depth, or just learning with that experience, or just stronger at home. The fan base, they get 30,000 most home games now, depending on who the opposition are. Which is just incredible, and it's a fantastic atmosphere and stuff like that. So everything's all going in the right direction, and I think as long as it keeps on that upward curve, I think fans are fairly patient. I think the owner, Doug King, is impatient. He wants to get to the Premier League tomorrow, but I think the fans, as long as Coventry keep improving and keep achieving, days out at Wembley. Yeah, it was disappointing to lose to Manchester United in the semi-final, and everybody felt aggrieved about the VAR decision on the day that denied them that place in the final. But it's still a fantastic day out at Wembley where everybody could hold their heads high and say, yeah, look, we did something special today. We didn't get there, but it was something special. So these are special times, and these trips to Wembley are special times because fans have suffered for so long, as I said before, just treading water and just sort of just not achieving anything, struggling to get a top half finish in the table, in whatever division they were in. For so many years, it was just sort of awful football, and no success at all. And then under Mark Robins, it took off, and it's carried on under Frank.
You mentioned there earlier as well, Frank's got this capability of playing with a 3 at the back or a 4 at the back. Just ahead of Friday night, do you have any indication yourself of how Coventry might approach the game? What can Wrexham expect to see on Friday?
I actually think, he's changed so far this season. He prefers a flat back 4. He normally goes 4-2, 3-1 with wingers, and the fullbacks bombing on. But at Portsmouth last week, he changed to 3 at the back, and it's interesting because you've got Luke Wolfenden, who came in as a deadline day signing from Ipswich, who's got great experience, Premier League experience, that sort of stuff. He's not been able to get in the team in the 4. And then when they were down at Millwall, he changed it in the second half in game to a 3, and it worked really well just to sort of see out the game. They were winning comfortably. But he just sort of changed it to mix it up, get Luke Wolfenden on the pitch. And then for the first time this season, he started with the back 3 and wing backs at Portsmouth last week. And that worked really well against, I don't want to do them be disrespectful, but against a bit of an old school, sort of rough, physical, aggressive Portsmouth side who beat Coventry 4-1 in Frank Lampard's 5th game in charge last November. So that was sort of large in the memory, I think. That was sort of a bit behind the sort of thinking of changing to that. And it worked really well. It was almost like seamless transition, really. And he's got this situation now where he can make changes, and it's not a shock to the system, to the players. They've all bought into it. They all understand why they've done it and how it operates. And that was really effective against Portsmouth, where they won 2-1. So it wouldn't surprise me if he reverted to that again at Wrexham, just because of the type of opposition it is. It's sort of, horses for courses sort of thing. I might be wrong, but I suspect he might again go with 3 at the back and wing backs.
I've got to ask you as well, and finally, Andy, is there who do you think the crucial man would be from Cos' point of view on Friday? And is there any sort of notable team news from Sky Blue's perspective of who might be available, who might not be available for the game?
Well, in terms of the team news, injury news, he's quite well stocked at the minute. He's just got sort of a couple of long-term injuries, which a goalkeeper, Oliver Dovin, who's got an ACL. We're not going to see him till the new year at the earliest. And Jack Rodoni, who would be their star man. He's been out for 5 or 6 weeks now with a calf strain. And as far as I'm aware, he's not going to be available Friday. You never know with these things, but the sort of the timescale for him was Frank was hoping that he'd be back before the next international break in November. So I suspect he won't be ready for Friday. But in terms of star players, the one man that makes everything tick really is Matt Grimes. He's just been class. He's just a Rolls Royce. He just sits in the middle of the park there, just mopping everything up, and he drops deep almost as another centre half at times, or as a fullback sometimes, and sort of covers and allows others to get forward. But he just sort of is control of the ball and use of the ball and winning of the ball. It's just exceptional. Rarely gives it away when he has it. He just does such a crucial job in the team, in that sort of engine room, really. And then, you've got exciting wingers. You've got Ephraim Mason-Clark, who's a real threat on the left. You've got Tatsuhiro Sakamoto, who's a real threat on the right. But Brandon Thomas Asante, he's just in this rich vein of form. I think 7 goals in 7 games in the last 7 games. And he's just flying at the minute. So, there are lots of exciting and attacking threats in the team. And obviously, Hardie Wright, is always capable of getting goals. But I suspect that Ellis Simms might play a part. Whether they share the game time, one starts and comes off at 60 minutes or whatever, and then change it or not, I don't know. But it'll be interesting, certainly. But those two, when you've got that luxury of having Hardie Wright to start and Ellis Simms to come off the bench, it's a great thing for a manager to have, or vice versa. It really is.
Luxury of riches. Yeah, we'll see if it's going to be a trick or treat for Coventry then on Friday night. Happy Halloween. What could possibly go wrong, eh?
There was just one player that's going to be missing, and that's Milan van Avak, who's the regular right back or right wing back, if they play with a three, who's suspended because he picked up his 5th yellow card at the weekend against Watford. So he won't play, but they've got Kane Kessler-Hayden, who they signed from Aston Villa, who was Preston North End's player of the season last season when he went out on loan there. He'll come straight in as a straight swap for him. So it's sort of, it doesn't really weaken the side. And he's come off the bench a few times, but he hasn't really had the opportunity to sort of stamp his mark. But he's an exciting player as well, and very good.
Yeah. And Andy, for you, come to North Wales to watch the game. Like I said, when we had that FA Cup tie, you might have maybe thought Wrexham might be thereabouts. But what are you looking forward to ahead of Friday night? Do you think it's going to be a tight game, or do you think Coventry, given the form they're in, they shouldn't really fear anyone at this moment in time?
Well, I don't think they will fear it, but I think there's a real hint of caution about this game, because it's one of those games, isn't it? It's a bit like going to Portsmouth last week. You think, this is going to be a really tough challenge, and anybody who takes it lightly and anybody who thinks it's going to be a breeze, I think is going to be in for a shock, because I think it's going to be difficult. I think they're going to be right up for it. I mean, Coventry, they're at the top of the league now. They're there to be shot at, aren't they? And I think everybody wants to have a pop at them now. Everybody wants to try and get that scalp, if you like. And Frank Lampard, he will warn about complacency with his players. And after every game, it's like, right, on to the next one. What does this game pose? What are the challenges we have to face here? What do we have to overcome? How can we overcome it? And so he'll be going through Wrexham's sort of form and their strengths and weaknesses, with a fine-tooth comb, and sort of trying to come up with a game plan to stop them, to get round them, to get through them, and get another 3 points. But it's it's not going to be easy. I think it will be a tight game. I can't see. I mean, Coventry are scoring lots of goals at the moment, but I can't see it being a high-scoring game, to be honest, on Friday night. It's just going to be really difficult.
Rob, Ryan, Red, who are we to disagree? With Nathan Salt and Rich Fay.
So, Claudio, thank you very much for joining us on Rob, Ryan, Red. And it's a few years since Wrexham played Coventry. We were maybe not the plucky non-league underdogs that day when we had our famous FA Cup meeting, but we now meet you in the league as equals, although Coventry seem to be a class apart from everyone else this season. What has changed in the last couple of years since we played you back at the start of 2023?
Oh, that's interesting, because I'm not sure a lot has changed, apart from the fact that now we seem to be taking all the chances we pretty much create, as proven on Saturday, where we win 3-1 and Watford's keeper didn't actually make a single save during the game, which is bizarre. I don't know how that works. According to the XG and all that, Watford should have beaten us, but they didn't take the chances. And at the minute, we are taking our chances. We've always created chances. Even that FA Cup match where I think you were dying for the final whistle in the end, because it was an onslaught, wasn't it, the last 15 minutes, when Mark Robbins decided to put out the first team. Because I think he underestimated you that day. You were on a bit of a high, and I knew what was coming. And we totally couldn't deal with the long throw-ins, the balls into the box. And once we got hold of got a grip of the game in the second half, we put some our better players on, we came back into it, but it was too late, basically. Too much to do in too little time. But it's mainly taking chances. It's we've got the same defence from the last 2 seasons. It's changed when we played you guys. But they basically have improved massively all around the pitch. And I think that's down to Frank Lampard and the coaching staff.
I was going to ask you about that. In terms of the last few years, you've always been the bridesmaid, haven't you? You had that FA Cup semi-final, heroic heartbreak. You've had the playoff campaigns. It must be quite difficult as a Cov fan going into a season because obviously the ambition is to always go one better. But did you have any doubts going into this campaign that almost this squad could be scarred by what they've experienced in the past, but they seem to have used it as an advantage, really?
We had our little predictions at the start of the season, and I thought we'd get into the playoffs. I thought we'd, I felt we're improving each season, and I thought, well, if we got to playoff semi-finals last season, surely we can get to the playoffs again this season. Like I said, FA Cup semi-final that season, I think about 6 games to go. If we'd have won maybe 4 out of the 6, we'd have been in the playoffs then as well. But we completely imploded at home and lost all 3 remaining home matches. Of course, we missed out before we got beaten by Luton. So I felt there was a chance we'd get into the playoffs. But I didn't think we'd start like this. This is totally unexpected. And there'd be no Cov fan saying that after 12 games, did you think we'd be unbeaten? Absolutely not. In fact, to be honest, not many fans of any club would think that in the Championship. It's just not done. It rarely happens. And, long may it continue, obviously.
Yeah, you always expect there to be some slip up. Hopefully it's unlucky 13 for you on Friday night. You mentioned Lampard there, and an interesting character because particularly Championship level, he's got a real good track record, but given his high profile jobs, you look at Everton, you look at Chelsea, he's almost got a peculiar reputation, hasn't he, as a manager, where I think lots of outsiders who maybe don't watch his teams every single week might sort of laugh him off. But how impressed have you been with him as your manager, and how has he sort of embraced the Coventry fans and won them over?
By winning games. Our home form's astonishing. We've lost 2 games since he's come in, and that was to Leeds and Burnley, which basically pretty much walked the league last season. So that was kind of expected. But the main thing was making the CBS a fortress, which really it is now. We are winning so many games at home. Away from home, not so great still. I mean, we've had a good start this season, but we've lost. We've put out some pretty dreadful performances last season away from home. I think he's seen the fan base, the way in the last few seasons we've grown and grown. It's got back to where it was in the late 60s, early 70s. The crowds are ridiculous now, especially at home. We're selling out all the away games. And I think he's taken it all on board. And I think he's just basically embraced it all and sort of joined in. He's realised the camaraderie between the fans and the players. And we've got a chairman as well, an owner. And I think he's feeling it as well now. So I think it's just like a togetherness. So you've probably had similar because of what's happened at Wrexham. And you just feel like everybody's singing from the same hymn book and it's working.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And it's not about having brilliant players either sometimes. It's just getting the right balance throughout the squad. Although we have got a very thin squad at the minute. But it's, I think people just want to. How can you not like Frank Lampard to start with? He was a great player. He comes across really well. At Chelsea, I think he got him into the Champions League, didn't he? Everton kept him up. 2 thankless jobs, really, because at Chelsea you could be fired within 6 months. If you see a season, you're doing pretty well at Chelsea. Everton, financial troubles. I mean, you're from that neck of the woods up there. You know what's going on at Everton. It's a nightmare of a club, really. And Derby did pretty well. And he also encouraged young players at Derby, which is what he's trying to do now with us. I just think the way he started, it's absolutely fantastic. And that's what's got the fans on board. And I think everyone's feeling it.
In terms of the style of play then, what is it that Coventry do? They seem to score a hell of a lot of goals. They seem to have a lot of attacking threat. But in terms of a formation, in terms of a tactical blueprint, what is it that you would say Coventry side looks like under Frank Lampard?
I was warned by an Everton friend and a Chelsea friend who says, don't expect to defend. And we're seeing it this season full on. We basically are all out attack most of the time. I've only seen a couple of games where he's played a bit defensive. It rarely happens. He wants to get forward quite quickly, which does expose us at the back, and we do give up chances. I think what's happened this season is we've got a decent keeper and we're getting that stroke of luck. We're getting that rub of the green at the minute. and it's got us through these first 12 games. But the style of play is basically it's simple: get it forward, break forward quickly. They're not even wing backs; they're actually full backs, but they're getting up the pitch, and that's where we get exposed at the back. So against you guys, I'll be surprised if he doesn't play 3 at the back, mainly because of Kiefer Moore. I think, but it depends what you do, because you got the cup game this week, and I cannot imagine you put a weakened team out against Cardiff.
It's going to be interesting. There'll be this will probably be out after that. There will have been rotation against Cardiff. I expect Kiefer will have been on the bench for them. So I'd expect the Cov game to be closest, pretty similar to what we played at Middlesbrough last weekend, depending on injuries. So you'd have Kiefer Moore up there, and you'd have maybe not Ben Sheaf then in midfield from a Wrexham point of view. And he's also an interesting one. We had Coventry fans on in the summer when we signed Ben Sheaf, and like you said, the message then was that Coventry was sort of trying to streamline their squad for this campaign. And from your point of view, when Ben Sheaf left, what were your feelings around that transfer?
It was a good transfer for the money we were getting, and in that perspective, great. 6.5 million for Ben, wonderful. But he's a sort of player I didn't want to lose, because we are thin on the ground. And Victor Torp's out injured, Radoni's out injured. Ben Sheaf isn't the same kind of player, but Ben Sheaf's a good player, to have in your midfield. So it's an experienced player we lost, basically. And it was sad to see him go, because he's a top man, top professional. He actually, he loved being at the club. He was the club captain. And I know he's proud to be club captain as well. But it's just, I think the problem is with Ben going, it left us light again. And it was too late in the day to bring anybody in. And the owner and Frank Lampard have said, we are a bit light. We've got 16-year-old on the bench at the minute, 2 games running, which is unusual for us. So it's the sort of thing we don't normally do. But it's out of necessity more than anything, because it is a light squad. We sent out 2 guys on loan, which was a surprise as well. But it is what it is now. So we're going to have to put up with it till January. But according to Frank, we're not going to let anybody else go. We're going to strengthen. So that'd be interesting.
Well, Andy, we've heard from both of them. What changes are you making on Friday? Has anyone done enough to earn a role in that team from what you saw on Tuesday night? Or do you think it's going to be revert to the Middlesbrough blueprint? And what do you do at left centre-back?
Well, that's a big one. I mean, Thomason, like I mentioned a bit earlier, was second half, he was a lot more better, but it was just that sometimes the composure in the first half, I kind of felt. And again, you don't know what impact that is with the team he's playing against. I mean, again, you've got Ryan Longman, who's a right winger playing left wing back next to you. You've got Conor Coady, who's, I say, in and out the team. He's been out the team. He's been out the squad, playing next to you in the middle. And there is that uncertainty of then you're thrown into this left-sided centre-back role when, I mean, you can kind of do a job there, I guess, but you are a box-to-box all energy, maybe defensive midfielder. You can do that. I don't know, because you look at the centre-backs we've got available, whether through fitness or suspensions, and you need some mobility in the wide centre-backs. Obviously, we've got Max, who's been brilliant this season as the right. And I think maybe it's that thing with Hyam. I think, does Hyam go on the left and Dan Scott? Because I think Dan Scott, if he plays, which I expect him to, I think he has to be in the middle. I think ideally Hyam is the middle, but I think he's probably the slightly better option for the left-sided centre-back, and Dan comes in, Big Dan at the middle of the 3. And then it's like kind of fingers crossed for Kakachi to be fit. Obviously, Kabore come back in. I don't think anybody. I mean, maybe we try. Maybe it's outside the box, and I know some fans got on his back really badly against Cardiff. Maybe try Thomason as a left wing back. Who knows? As in, he's more naturally defensive minded than say Ryan Longman. But I think we kind of revert to type. I think Matty James comes back in. I think it'll be Matty James, Lewis O'Brien, and Dobbo in the middle of the park. Dobbo for me has probably been the player of the season so far, which I'm very happy with the step up he's made with that. And I think maybe Arthur comes back in. Callum Burton as well. I think maybe some people obviously hit out with him a bit for the second goal for Cardiff, and I didn't see it at the time because where I'm sat, it's by the dugout, so all the management crew there. So I saw the ball go in, I heard the hit, I saw the hit, but I didn't see it go in until today I rewatched it. It's like, yeah, maybe do
You
better. But I thought
rewatched
Callum
it,
Burton.
you sadist.
Well, it was only when you asked me to come onto this, because it's like I need to talk about the goal down at some point, so I best watch it. But I thought Callum Burton kept the score down as well. But I think Arthur comes back in. Josh Windass will probably come back in. And then, I mean, Rich, to spin it back to you, what do you do with Nathan Broadhead? Why has Parky bought this record signing and we don't seem to know what to do with him?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it, in that regard? I still think there's a player there, and we've seen elements of this season. But I said at the start of the season, I think I got some raised eyebrows for it. I still just think he's a super sub at best. I don't think he's a starter in this Wrexham team because he's a left winger. And it's almost like he's been bought for the next Wrexham manager rather than for Parky, because I just don't see a way that you get the best out of him in this formation from the start. I still think that, like you said, right now, I think we're better suited, particularly against Coventry, to go back to the formation from last season where you fill your midfield and you have one off Kiefer Moore up top. Probably, like you said, Windass, because I think that suits him. Broadhead could maybe do it, but I don't think right now that's the time for him to do so. So there isn't a starting role for Broadhead. He can come off the bench and influence a game when you need a goal, but yeah, I still just don't get it. It seemed like, and again, he can't dictate the transfer fee. Ipswich have set that price. Wrexham have agreed to pay it. And it's not just Phil Parkinson, by the way, who said that's a fair price. It will have been everyone else at the club, the hierarchy. It will have been Williamson, Harvey, Les Reed. You're thinking everyone basically you'd think would have agreed on this transfer fee and deemed it to be good enough value for money. So they must think he can work at some point, and he's got better as well, I would definitely say. It's just, I personally think you could have invested that amount of money elsewhere in the squad to be more effective. I think having another wing back would be really useful to this Wrexham team.
Yeah.
And even just getting another target man, not someone who has to be Kiefer Moore, but just someone who means that when you've not got Kiefer on the pitch, you can still make that same tactic work. You just need someone where the
Ollie
ball
Palmer.
will stick. And, well, that's the ironic thing. That is the ironic thing, is that Ollie Palmer, you would say, is better suited to this Wrexham team even now than Ryan Hardie and maybe even Sam Smith are. Sam Smith obviously is a better player. We all know that. Ryan Hardie probably is a better footballer than Ollie Palmer as well. But this, again, if you look at transfers, it's not just what they've done elsewhere, it's how effective they'll be in your system. And that was the case when we signed Ollie Palmer. People were saying that's a waste of money because he's just this big lump up front. But we needed that. We needed that in that Wrexham team that had those 3 successive promotions. He's a facilitator. And I said at the time, I think there could have been a role for Ollie Palmer. I really do think. And even on Tuesday night, the cross comes in, free kick, isn't it? Ryan Hardie's first touch. I know he's low on confidence, heads it straight at trot in the Cardiff goal. Maybe I'm just being old romantic, but something tells me Ollie Palmer scores that and we go and win the game 3-1 or something. But hey.
I think the Broadhead one you mentioned there is, I mean, traditionally he is a left winger, and we don't play wingers, and it's just like when we made the sign in, I thought maybe there was maybe going to be a slightly different tweaker system, and obviously that's not come to pass. And obviously you could play that drop off forward. I mean, he's technically a very good footballer, an exceptional footballer, and you just, I don't know, if we're paying £7.5 million, and again, it's not a dig at Broadhead himself because he doesn't set that fee, but if we're willing to pay £7.5 million for somebody we see as a super sub, I dare to ask the question of what John Paskin would be worth in the modern era, which is a very dated reference for our younger listeners and viewers. But yeah, 2-0, like I said, 2-0 down on Friday. I'm
I was going to ask you, because I do think we are better suited to the Coventry game, and I really do think that these sort of Friday nights under the lights, and again, the narrative switched now. Tuesday night we were heavy favourites, I feel. Friday night we're underdogs again. I really do feel that tag suits us in the way we play football. There is less onus of us to have the ball against Coventry, and we can play in a similar vein to the Cardiff game, but the perspective of that performance would be very different because you're playing against Coventry and they're the unbeaten team, the team who's top of the league and looks destined for the Premier League. So, yeah, I think I fancy us just because it's Wrexham. This is what Wrexham do. The games you don't expect us to get things from, we often do. And then, I mean, I think, I'm part of that era of Wrexham fan from sort of watching us in the National League predominantly. And it felt like every time we were on TV, we lost. That's just what we did. In the big occasion, we lost. And I always look back to that Grimsby 150 game as the sort of, that is Wrexham in a nutshell to me. when there was all this hype and we just put in a very similar performance to that Cardiff one where we just didn't do anything for the entire match. So, yeah.
So many times over the years where, because at that point in time that you're talking about, it was almost a novelty to see Wrexham on TV. So I'd always, whether I was at the game or not, I'd always record it. And then as soon as I got home, speed delete that recording because we got smashed by somebody. These days, it's a little bit different where obviously we're on TV a bit more.
Do you want to know something funny? Because this week, this is really deep, boring podcast chat. My free sat box broke, okay? So I had to get my hard drive. I remembered I've got a Freeview box in the loft that I haven't touched for 5-6 years. And I went on that Freeview box to see if I could take the hard drive out. I couldn't. But I had three things saved on that hard drive box on the box. One was the full S4C broadcast of the 2013 trophy final. A BBC Wales series called Welsh Towns or something, and it was about Wrexham. And then I also had the National League highlight show from when we beat Forest Green 2-1 or draw 2-1 with Forest Green, or York? Where's York scored a last-minute winner, I think, for us. Against Cheltenham Town, I think it might have been.
I thought you meant York City. I was like, no, where's York we're talking about? Okay.
Yeah, where's York scored against Cheltenham Town? They're the three things I had saved. Because, again, it was such a novelty in that era to watch Wrexham on the TV. So, as disappointing as Cardiff defeat was, we're on the box every week. We're going to be on it again on Friday night. Andrew Pollard's saying a 2-0 win.
What's there to worry about? I've had a habit for the last few years of 3-0 every game. I've kind of tempered my expectations now in the Championship to 2-0. But I think, I don't know, I would happily take a point, but it's almost a free hit. You kind of talked about the differences between this and the Cardiff game, where we go into Cardiff obviously as favourites. And it's almost, I wouldn't say that the pressure's off, because obviously the result against Cardiff means there's pressure on from certain circles towards Phil Parkinson. But it's a game that we're going into, most fans not expecting to win, or some fans not expecting to get anything out of. So in that regard, if we did get beat, it's not the end of the world. And again, Coventry are absolutely flying, like you said, undefeated. The amount of goals they've scored is ridiculous. I think they've got, was it the top two scorers in the division, or two out of the top three? It's Hardie Wright is clicking into this play that we've heard about for years that he could become. And we've got to face that, and we've got to defend that. And hopefully we get something. But if I'm going for like an actual proper prediction, I can never predict the Town loss. So I'm going to go 1-0. No, 2-2 2-2 draw under the lights.
I see. It's already doubled the score there. I love that you said every league we go up, you sort of take a goal off the scoreline. So next year when we win the Premier League, it's got to be just 1-0 to the Town every single week.
Oh, totally. Yeah, forget 1-0 to the Arsenal. It's 1-0 to the Town next season.
You've heard it here first. Thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us on this emergency Rob Ryan Red. We will be back again at the weekend, probably, to look back on whatever happened against Coventry and to look ahead to Pompey next Wednesday night. Of course, I bought my ticket. You can't keep us away from this. Thank you very much. Take care, and we will see you again next time.
The Wrexham AFC podcast with Nathan Salt and Rich Bay.